Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me in studio, we have Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat writer, Charlie O'Connor. What's going on today, Chuck?
You know, back covering practice, back getting into the swing of things after a nice little 2-day break. So doing well.
I usually try to plan our schedule so we have Friday off.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta tell you, Sunday, Monday, real nice.
Yeah, not bad.
Real nice.
Not
but
too shabby.
Here we are back Tuesday today with our 4 p.m. live show at our normal time. Got back-to-back games Wednesday, Thursday this week. A lot of stuff going on. The roster freeze starts Thursday. I want to start with a little news today. The newsiest thing we have.
Yeah.
And I think it's somewhat interesting. Emil Andrae is going to remain out at least for game one.
We don't have 100% confirmation, but based on the lines today at practice, he was an extra defenseman along with Erik Johnson. Jaeger Zamula remains on that, I guess you can call it a second pair with Rasmus Ristolainen. So the circumstantial evidence would imply that Andrae will likely sit on Wednesday against the Detroit Red Wings. They are, I would assume, probably already in Detroit because they practice here in Voorhees today. Then they got on a plane and headed to Detroit. So they're probably already in the Midwest.
He's wearing normal jersey, Emil Andrae. There's no sign
that he's injured. No,
because if it was my thing, after he got hit by Olivier in the Columbus game, he didn't look healthy when he came back to the bench. Mm-hmm. If he was in concussion protocol, like, you can't just have him out there.
He practiced right after that.
So he's been all set in terms of, at least in front of you guys, it's normal.
I was willing to buy the idea that maybe the first game was precautionary. Hey, you know, he's played a lot of games, maybe get some load management in here and give it a couple of days to see if a headache pops up. Maybe. I was willing to buy that. The fact that we're now going on a week and he's practiced as if he's a normal player and not dealing with any serious injury concerns, no, this is now, even if it started precautionary, this has now entered the realm of he is a healthy scratch and has been left out of the lineup purposely.
He is purposefully being left out of the lineup. And that's, like, from the weekend, weird schedule this week, no early week game, then a Wednesday, Thursday back-to-back. We'd be like, well, he's had plenty of time now. Let's get him back in. But that doesn't appear like it's going to be the case, at least for Wednesday. Obviously, we'll be here for pregame tomorrow. If there are lineup changes, we'll let you know. But it was funny. You and I talking a little bit pre-show just about some of the Torts quotes that have come out, and we're going to get to those in regards to Matvei Michkov, and especially in regards to our favorite subject, Morgan Frost, star of both BSH Radio and PHLY Flyers over the last several years. But you found the comments going back to Michkov's scratch a little bit interesting. What did you think about those?
I did. So these were comments that John Tortorella made yesterday. I think what it was is that Kevin Kurz was writing a kind of like a Michkov update story.
Yeah.
So he was asking questions.
And that came out today, I believe.
Yeah. He was asking questions to John Tortorella at yesterday's practice about Michkov and about the fact that he was sat those 2 games. And basically, did he get the kind of reaction that he wanted? Presumably the answer is yes, because Michkov has been on a scoring tear pretty much ever since he came back in the lineup. And there's been no word of any serious strife between the two of them. So Kevin Kurz asked Tortorella that question, and Tortorella more or less responded with something like, I wasn't worried about it at all, because if he didn't respond well, he just would have stayed out of the lineup. You know, I'm not in the business of babysitting. If he doesn't respond well, he stays out until he responds well. that jumped out at me because I'm mildly surprised that Emil Andrae is not back in the lineup. And I do wonder if, yes, he was answering a Kevin Kerr's question. I do wonder, though, was that meant to have another audience, an audience of one Emil Andrae who maybe he doesn't think is responding as well as he could to being sat for a few games?
So this is the quote straight out of Kevin Kerr's piece in The Athletic, came out yesterday. Tortorella scoffed at a question on Monday about whether he was concerned how Michkov might react to coming out of the lineup last month. And this is the quote: "If he doesn't react the right way, he'll keep sitting. I'm not talking about Matvei. If any player doesn't react the right way, I'm not in business. I'm not in the business to babysit.
Right.
I'm in the business to teach. I knew I wouldn't have a problem with him. I knew he'd go the right way." And listen, those are quotes directly answering a question about Mish.
Yes.
But we know, again, we talk all the time, while he is sometimes, like after a game especially, emotional, I like to joke around, call him insane, he is incredibly media savvy.
Yeah, he
has never shied away from sending messages through the media. He does it in different ways.
And to be clear, the messages he sends through the media are messages that he's already sent to the player directly.
Yeah, it's never the first time a player is hearing.
We've asked players who have gotten those messages sent to them through the media, and to a man, they're like, well, yeah, what didn't surprise me, he said that to me this morning.
Yeah. It is rarely, if ever, the first time a player is hearing that criticism or hearing that message, whatever it might be.
Right.
I can see a world, as you said, where maybe Emil Andrae's, I don't even want to say demotion, like he's still in the NHL.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden going from, as you know, the coach put it, a top 4 defenseman, and that's not you calling him that. Like the coach was playing him over 20 minutes.
But
a
he
night.
did bring that up, and that also struck me as a bit odd. Not because he took a shot at me, because whatever.
I mean, that was unfun.
Coaches do that, but it was odd that he brought up that specific thing of like, well, people are calling him a top 4 defenseman, and he's not there yet. Like, it just makes me wonder if there's a feeling from Torts' perspective that like maybe this kid's getting a little full of himself, and I just feel like I might have to chop him down a little bit to rebuild him the right way.
And like, maybe not even full of himself, but like the reaction to being scratched. I remember last season, and we talked about that coming into this year. Emil Andrae makes the team out of camp last year. Mm-hmm. Plays in the 4 games. It's very apparent he is in over his head. Yeah. Like, yeah, man, he has tools that this team needs. I guess it was worth a shot, but then you see him out on the ice, and it's like, yeah, he ain't there, and he might get killed trying to keep doing this, so we need to send him down to the AHL. And eventually, he becomes the Phantom's best defenseman. It's all good. But those first couple of weeks back in the AHL, it's not as if everything was, oh, man, yeah, this is a guy ticketed for the NHL. Look how great it's been going. There was a little bit of, I don't know if I want to use wallowing, but for lack of a better term, maybe he just wasn't all that happy about being sent down. And you're not supposed to.
We're just bummed in general.
Yeah, like just bummed.
I'm not saying that he's sulking. Yeah. It's just, he's deflated because he was just in the NHL, and now he's got to reset in a new, lesser league.
And you're supposed to be disappointed that you got sent down. Like, they don't want you happy that you're in the AHL, especially after playing in the NHL. But there's a way to go about it. Obviously, they don't want, oh, yeah, I'm scratched. Cool. Like, they don't want you saying that either. But maybe there's just a certain way to go about it, and the coach isn't seeing that.
And I don't even know I don't know if Andre's even doing anything wrong. He could be taking this completely normally, and Torts just has it in his head that he's taking it the wrong way. You know what I mean?
Yes, that's always people's perception, and again, a crazy person's perception. Like, he wants you to react a certain way, and you're doing what you think is right, but it's not what the coach wants. Right. And maybe
I feel like he ran into that with Morgan Frost a lot.
Yes, like Frost, a great teammate. No one has anything bad to say, but it's like Kelly would joke. He wants Frost to come in his office, take his shirt off, and challenge him to a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, he could have reacted correctly, but not the way Torts won. And maybe that's what's going on with him. Yeah. There's a million different reasons. Maybe he just thinks Zamula's playing well right now. Maybe. Like, that's totally with him.
I just think it's weird that the one game, whatever, Even the second game, like, hey, he scratched Michkov for 2 games too, because they were, one right after another basically. And it's like, nah, we want to send a message. The fact that there's now a 3-day gap between games, and it looks like coming out of that 3-day gap, Andrae is still out of the lineup. Add in the fact, and I don't think Zamula's been bad since he's been in, over these 2 games. I don't think he's been outright terrible. He's shown some flashes, had some good shifts. His underlying numbers have been solid in that second pair role with Ristolainen. But I don't think he's been anything amazing. I don't believe watching those 2 games, I've thought to myself, like, man, can't move Zamula out of that spot. He's been fine. He's been better than he was certainly in the first couple weeks of the year, but he hasn't played so well that I think to myself, well, man, it's going to be tough for Andrae to get back in the lineup.
The only reason it's like tough for him to get back is that there's essentially only that one spot for him. You look at the left side and it's like, well, yeah, Nick Seeler hasn't been maybe the Nick Seeler from last year, but stylistically, we're not talking about the same player at all here. And if you're going to fill in the boxes of what we want our defense to be, you're not going to move Seeler out and put Andrae in.
And there's also the fact that I think they're trying to develop Jamie Drysdale. And they like the idea of having him next to a stabilizing force that Nick Seeler very much is. For better or worse, what Nick Seeler is going to do. You know the way he plays. He knows exactly what he is. And Jamie Drysdale can focus on Jamie Drysdale without having to think about what Nick Seeler is going to do. Emil Andrae, this is part of what makes him a exciting young prospect, is that he does freelance. He does random things because he has skill and he wants to make plays, and that's great, and I want that in the lineup. I maybe don't want that next to Jamie Drysdale right
Exactly. Now. And then you just look at moving things around. It's like, well, Drysdale, Risto, both right-handed. There's just a lot of square pegs, round holes where it's, maybe you don't need to have perfect complements everywhere, but like we're trying to get Drysdale to that level where he's doing those things that we're getting out of Andrae.
Right.
Like we want you doing that stuff, and we saw how hard it was for Sanheim and York to kind of, okay, well, if one defers and the other really takes charge, are we getting everything out of both of them? And it's kind of a balancing act. And with so much for Drysdale to relearn, no, you can't put those 2 together.
Yeah. Plus,
as fun as that might be for us,
it would be a small pairing.
Yes.
You know that they pay attention to those things.
They don't want those 2 together. That makes sense to me. There just might not be a perfect spot to get Emil Andrae back in if they're that invested in like, all right, let's just see if we can get a little more out of Zamula.
Yeah. Well, I just thought, and 2, when we were watching the Saturday game, I thought Zamula's play on the breakaway goal, that was rough. That was not the best read by him. I thought that was going to be their, not even excuse, but let's say justification for saying, all right, Yegor, you had some good plays. It wasn't all bad, but come on. That was a real big mistake. Emil's going back in. Doesn't look like that's the case. Looks like they're going to roll with Yegor Zamula for a 3rd straight game. I actually talk about this in my post-practice notes video, which should be out in the next couple hours. Going back through Yegor Zamula's scratch record of this year, because he's been scratched quite a few times.
Yeah.
The longest consecutive streak of scratches that he's had this year was 4 games. It was 4 games over, I believe, a 10-day period. Andrae's just at 3. So maybe if that's their internal, this is as long as we're willing to, in a row, to scratch a young defenseman prospect. It's coming up on that, but we're not quite there yet.
And I can see a situation where you might want to go, okay, some games on, some games off. At a certain point, do you think it makes more sense to send Andrae back if
he's not
getting in?
If he's not playing, yeah. Now, I don't think it makes sense to send him back based on what he's done in the NHL. Like that to me would be a bad move, because you look at his performance, his objective results, both in terms of point production and even strength, and then also especially the impacts that he's had at 5-on-5 and even strength. I think that would be dumb, because I think he's been one of their best performing defensemen, period. But if the coach isn't going to play him, regardless of all of that, then you might have to send him down, because obviously you want the guy to be playing.
Yeah, he needs to play.
The problem here is not like, it would make sense to send him down if he's not playing. The decision that doesn't make sense is the fact that he's not playing.
Yeah, that's the odd thing right now and you just wonder exactly what they want out of him other than protecting himself a little better. Because, listen, he does take some shots, and that hit he took from Olivier was huge. That's why I was willing to be like, listen, yeah, get him out of the lineup a few games because I think he might have been hurt. But if he's in a full contact jersey at practice, he's out there doing everything else normally, and it's just, he's paired with Erik Johnson right now. That is where it stops making sense for me, other than they just believe in Zamula.
Yeah. Or, I mean, they want to give him looks. I've told you that they're higher on Zamula than I think you and Kelly especially are. They believe that he has further upside, that maybe they can develop him into a second pair defenseman, which is the role he's playing right now. So there is some juice to that theory. That said, you watch both of them. One guy has more upside than the other. And I think you hook John Tortorella up to a lie detector, I think he would probably agree.
Yeah, so we will see how that plays out. And before we go any further in today's show, I got to tell you about our friends at Rite Aid. You got to help protect it. It's not funny. Pneumonia is no laughing matter, folks. You got to help protect yourself from pneumonia, and adults age 50 and older are now eligible for the pneumonia vaccine. It used to be 65 and older, but the CDC recently lowered the age recommendation so millions more people can get the vaccine, because millions of people get pneumonia every year. It's a respiratory illness, and fall and winter are a time when the germs that cause respiratory disease spread more in the community. So now is the perfect time to get vaccinated and help yourself stay healthy through the holidays, because some people who get pneumonia, the symptoms are mild. It's not that big of a deal, but others experience very serious complications, and the vaccine is one of the best ways to keep yourself healthy, and it's usually no cost with your insurance. Getting vaccinated is easy. All you have to do is walk into your local Rite Aid or schedule an appointment online at riteaid.com. And if you're unsure of what vaccines you might need, ask your pharmacist for a personal recommendation and stop by your local Rite Aid today. While we're here, I got to tell you about our presenting sponsor, Bet365, because whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I've been telling you about them for months now. The 780,000 live events that they stream every year, the 90 million users worldwide, and the thing I love, the early payouts across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. One of the pioneers of live in-game betting. And right now, new customers can get a $150 bonus when you bet just $5. Use the code PHLY365 to sign up. Deposit $10 and place a bet to get $5 place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. And bonus bets can be used on the spread, total, player props, futures, and so much more. You know I love those early payouts. I've been placing all my bets through Bet365 this year. I think you should do it as well. You must be 21 or older, physically located in PA. If you or somebody who knows a gambling problem wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Chuck. Another thing that came out today, I don't know, it's not really new information. John Tortorella asked about Fedotov, said he really respects him, everything he's been through and all, but his decision remains, Kolosov's the number 2.
Yeah, well, obviously. The big question, I think, surrounding Fedotov at the moment is how much longer will they keep going with the 3 goalies? So Ivan Fedotov has not played in an NHL game since December 5th. That was against Florida. That game, he only got the first 20 minutes before he was pulled. So we are now coming up on nearly 2 weeks since the last time he got in game action. At some point, the guy is going to need to play. You don't want him cold. And presumably, then you've got, after this next stretch of games, then you've got the holiday break. So how long do you want him just sitting around? Because at some point, a goalie might get hurt. And if a goalie gets hurt, you don't want to be throwing a cold Ivan Fedotov in. Although I guess he did a pretty good job cold coming in Tampa that one time, although that was very much an emergency situation with Kolosov getting hurt and morning
There were no other goalies.
There were no other goalies. But it's an interesting question as to where is that line? Where is the line where it's been too long and they're going to have to make a decision on whether they're going to get him some AHL time? I straight up asked John Tortorella this today after practice. He was like, look, I'm not going to tell you the timeline, but I can tell you that there have been many conversations that we've had internally about when that line is. So I don't think they're there yet. And the one thing that Tortorella did say, which I think is probably driving them to let this drag out longer than maybe a lot of us thought it would, is they still want to make sure that Ersson isn't going to get hurt again. He said, look, he needs to prove he can stay healthy. So I think they're keeping Fedotov around in case Ersson gets hurt again. But at some point, they're going to have to just decide, well, I guess Harrison's healthy. He might not be playing his best hockey, but he's healthy. And we need to get Fedotov some work. And that's where you run into a situation of, do you waive him? Do you talk about a conditioning stint if he gives approval? Because John Tortorella, the thing he said today was, and this is very much hinting at the waivers aspect of it.
Yes.
He basically said something to the extent of, you don't want to do something and then regret it later if Harrison gets hurt. That tells me that they have very much considered the possibility of waiving him. Do I think he would get claimed? No, I would be very surprised. But is there an above 0% chance he gets claimed? Yeah, I think it's low. I think it's in the single digits and probably the low single digits, but it's possible.
I think now, especially that Colorado, and like, listen, I don't even think they would have claimed him, but it's just one of the goalie desperate teams is no longer goalie desperate. It lowers that possibility he gets claimed. And he stinks. I don't know how at the time, he was playing very poorly.
There was zero chance he was going to get claimed in early November when he had like an 820 save percentage. Now he's mostly looked like an NHL caliber goalie for what, like probably his last 5-6 starts, something like that.
Yeah, like outside of that, again, bad period in Florida, like it's one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah. And it wasn't like can't stop a beach ball bad. It was just he didn't look good.
The goals that, like, the actual pucks that went in that beat him, I was like, that's rough. But the plays that led up to it, it's like, well, that's a freaking breakaway by one of the fastest players in the league, and Evan Rodriguez. And then, like, just a real bad turnover with nobody in front. Like, okay, the situation's terrible for the goaltender, but then the pucks that actually beat him were like, he really probably could have stopped those.
Yeah,
but
he wasn't great.
Outside of that one game, he looked good.
Yeah, he looked fine.
And if you're a goalie desperate team, you may think about it. Yeah. Now, his cap hit, it's like, can they even do that?
And the second year.
Yes.
The fact that it's not...
And a whole nother
year that you're taking on... Like, let me put it this way. As much as I think Danny Briere has a ton of respect, just like Torts does, has a ton of respect for Ivan Fedotov, everything he's gone through. They like him as a person. I don't think Briere would be shedding tears if somebody claimed him in terms of the long-term plan.
No.
But I do think they would look at it as, well, you know, we're kind of in a playoff battle here. We'd like to make the playoffs, and we would rather keep a NHL caliber goalie in our organization.
Especially while, and I'm trying to bring this up to see if Makaniemi is still injured. I believe
he is still injured, yes.
Yes, he has not played since the 16th
I think he's out for a not insignificant amount of
Yes.
time. So I think he's out of the picture for now. And also, we had no idea if he was any good anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously, the thing people are scared about is, oh, God, we'd have to see Cal Peterson again. Because everyone's seen Cal Peterson.
Absolutely nobody. That's why I was just wondering if Makaniemi was still hurt. Because, like, he's played in the NHL before. His numbers in the AHL weren't bad. I definitely don't want to see Cal Peterson again.
Yeah.
But now that one of the goalie desperate teams has fixed that situation, and I seriously doubt Carolina would be interested. Like, they're trying to figure some things out, and it's not. I'd be shocked if it's their solution. Yeah. Their big solution here is Ivan Fedotov when it's like,
with that cap hit, given how careful they are with the salary cap, it would surprise me.
One of the reasons they don't have a goalie is because they don't want to spend money on a goalie. Yeah. Now let's spend a bunch of money on one who probably isn't very good. Yeah. Like, I can't imagine that would be their solution.
It would seem like a pretty big risk, especially from an organization that when they take risks on cheap guys.
Yes. It's like, we'll try Tony DeAngelo because he's been bought out again.
Yeah.
It's not, $3.5 million for a goalie who probably isn't very good. Yeah. That sounds like something we want to do.
So I do think there is an element probably for the Flyers where they look at it and they say, yes, maybe the long term, it might not be a bad thing if somebody were to claim Fedotov. In the short term, though, they like having the goalie depth, especially after what they saw happen last year.
All right. I want to do a little schedule update because we got a lot of fun stuff coming up for you over the next few days and weeks. It all starts tomorrow. That's right. Tomorrow, where, yes, we will have our typical pre and post game for the Flyers Detroit game. But there will also be a watch-along tomorrow. Everybody loves the watch-alongs, especially Charlie and I. No, listen, they're always a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun.
People like them.
People
watch them.
No, it's baffling to us, but thank you all for joining us. I don't fancy myself like a great play-by-play or color commentator, but
we try our best.
We really do, and it's going to be fun. I'll have some Christmas stuff, some trivia again. Kelly will be with us. Going to be a great time tomorrow.
Yeah, so it's going to be 3 of us.
Yeah, it'll be all 3 of us, and that's always better than when it's just you and I. So make sure you join for that. That'll be a ton of fun. Pre-game, watch-along, post-game for the Detroit game. After that, next Monday the 23rd, it's Festivus, baby. That's right, the annual BSH Festivus party. It's in conjunction with us this year, brought to you by our friends at Rite Aid. That's right. Check out your local Rite Aid. Come on out to the PHLY and BSH watch party and live show. We're going to be doing pre and post game. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's at the pub at Xfinity Live. What used to be Bullies, it's now just the pub, I guess. Come on out. That will be fun. And the following Saturday, so that's the Monday before Christmas, the Saturday after Christmas, we have a watch party at Heroes. That's right. Heroes in Glen Mills. It's going to be a great time. Come on out for that. It's Cutter v. Michkov.
The first Cutter game.
The first time.
Not the home game.
Not the home game.
But the first game.
But the very first time that these two teams will meet out in California. You can join us in Glen Mills at the Heroes Bar and Grill. Check out allphly.com. Click that events tab to RSVP, do all that fun stuff. See everything we have coming up. But it's a busy time of the year for everybody. I hope you can enjoy some of your holidays with us. All right, Chuck. So we got some interesting comments from Torts about a question we got last week. The idea of Matvei Michkov one day transitioning to center. He doesn't think so.
Yeah.
And
that lines up with what I told you about how the organization, at least in the here and now, views him as someone who is more of a wing than a center.
Even Brent Flair, it wasn't even this, it was last year.
Yeah, it was last year.
When you had your conversation with him, it was like, well, and that kind of makes sense. It's like when players like, oh yeah, Lane Johnson played quarterback. Well, yeah, Lane Johnson's in the NFL, and the best player typically of course, like, this great pitcher played shortstop. He was the best player. Yeah. That's just kind of the way it goes. You put your best player at center. Yeah. And that's what Mish was. They at least tried it in the KHL. But in all reality, now listen, I'm not saying in 5 years he can't do it. I'd be surprised, but I'm not going to say he can't. He's awesome.
Yeah. Never know.
But like right now, you watch him play. That is not a center. Like, you made the point, like, yeah, man, look at where he is. Like, when we get the puck in the defensive zone, it's no shock he's leading all these odd man rushes. He's already, forget like cheating a little.
Oh, yeah.
He ain't just a step behind the point man and then opens himself up. Nah, he's like stationary at the far blue line, waiting.
Yep.
And listen, that's where we got the Mad Russian nickname from. John Tortorella wants him doing that. This team has to cheat a little for offense because we're going to get into it. Like, look at the play driving numbers and then look at the goal scoring numbers. It's like, expected by who? That's a great like, while I think that is said like in bad faith a lot of the time, it makes sense with this team.
Yeah.
Like, this team has to cheat. He's one of those guys.
And he has the offensive skill and the finishing ability.
He's going to
take advantage of it. Yeah,
when Ryan Paling, it's like, well, else is a coin flip.
Yeah.
With Mish, it's like, yeah, it's probably going in.
Pretty good chance.
There's a real good chance that this goes in. And I just think Torts put it perfectly. We need to find a center to play with him.
Yeah.
Like Frost and the Frost stuff, like, this poor guy.
He's just catching strays.
Not even a question about
catching strays.
Like, Frosty is with him right now. It's been up and down. I'm not sure if that's the right marriage. None of us are sure about that. Honestly, if we are sure, and the answer is probably no.
But we've talked about how whether he's the right long-term fit or not, he's kind of the only fit now, which is more or less what Tortorella was saying.
Yeah, like what else are we?
Who else are we gonna put with him?
Like, yeah, I would like to see him maybe play with Sean Couturier because it looked like something was there. At least, okay, you have a guy who drives this offense. You have a guy who's a good play driver in Couturier and some size to get to the net that could help. But ultimately, Coots is going to play 20-plus minutes a night, and he's going to be up against the other team's top line.
Yeah.
Is that what we want to do with Michkov right now at 20, fresh 20 years old? Is that what's best for his development? Maybe not. So what other options are there? We would all freak out if it was Paling or Lawton or Cates.
Yeah.
No one wants any of that.
Yeah.
So,
and the Flyers know, like the Flyers like all those guys.
Yeah.
John Tortorella straight up said today he views Lawton as a wing more than a center.
Absolutely.
So that's okay. We're in agreement there.
Yeah.
Noah Cates, I have been a Noah Cates fan for a long time. He's not that good offensively.
No.
It's pretty clear at this point that he is a really strong defensive role player who can play down the middle if you need him to, but he's not a guy you want to put centering Matvei Michkov.
There's no stylistic fit, especially with the roles they're going to play, other than Morgan Frost. And that's just the way it is right now.
Until they make changes. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
I do have a thought that didn't occur to me. This is just one of my buddies, Greg, and hanging out the other night, having a few beers, talking about hockey. Because that's how I spend my off time, same way I spend my work time.
There's a reason why we love this job.
Yeah, it's pretty much like I'm doing, and my friends will be like, "Are you working out your material?" I'm like, yes, that is what I'm doing. Yeah, I am. I'm sorry, I just called you Charlie, but I am you're rehearsing with me right now. And we were talking about like Luchenko down the line, and I finally understand, I think, the reason to put Mish with Owen Tippett. Because I didn't think it was a stylistic fit at first, but it's starting to come around. If it's Luchenko with those two next year, like that is just some speed.
That could be fun.
Mishkov with both of those guys? Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. But obviously that is a while away.
I mean, hey.
But it just kind of came to me in that conversation.
It's shown potential over the last few weeks. So.
That has shown potential, and I thought Luchenko and Mishkov in the, especially in the rookie game, but some in the preseason playing together, like might be a little something there. But we will see. That's down the road, obviously.
I think the most important part about this point that Tortorella made, because I'm not unsympathetic to people chattering about this, because it makes sense that fans look at the roster. What's the roster's biggest weakness? What's the biggest hole? It's obviously center. You have this superstar 20-year-old who is amazing offensively playing the wing. It would solve so many problems if you could just take him, move him to the middle, and him be just as good in the middle as he was at wing, and then boom. You've solved the 1C problem that right now is the biggest long-term problem facing this organization. I get why people wish it was that easy. What this tells you is that the organization does not believe it's that easy. That they are looking at Michkov, at least for now, and by for now, I mean for the next couple years, as a right wing or at least a wing. You know, maybe they could try him out at left wing sometime down the road. They tried at the beginning of the year. They don't see him as a center solution. They are going to try to go out there and find a center solution elsewhere because Michkov is not that guy in their mind. So it's just that simple.
No. And Torts had a bunch of other great quotes about Michkov, just about the direction it's going. All complimentary. It seems, even with that scratch and everything, like the relationship going well, a bunch of his teammates are like, this dude, like, one, we can already communicate with him better, and just being out on the ice with him, you kind of learn. And it's the Kevin Kerr's piece, well worth the read, with all the quotes about Mish in there and stuff. But from all this, we get a bunch of Morgan Frost stuff.
Yeah, and
it's honestly, Kerr's did a good job of like re-clarifying, because at the end of that Torts quote, like, is Michkov playing center, and he's like, Frost, I'm not sure that's the right marriage, and then he ends it with like, in my mind, no. And people are like, oh, well, there you go. That part was referring to, can Michkov play center? No. And everyone kind of took it and ran with, he's saying Frost isn't the right mix, and obviously,
I think there was one point in the conversation where Tortorella basically said, like, it's not going to happen while I'm coach. Like, maybe another coach will see something different, but me, I don't see him as a center.
It's obviously the right fit right now is with Frost, but the more you hear John Tortorella talk about Morgan Frost, does it in your mind become like they have to do something sooner than later? I've been saying all along, this is a June, July problem. Yeah. Like, he's going to be here for the year.
I think so.
But on July 5th, he's probably not going to be here. Do you think that's the way it's going to go, or does this have to maybe be resolved sooner?
I don't think it has to be. And I know fans want it to be.
Well, yeah.
I think people are just
I want content, Charlie.
Well, it's not the content. I think people just want resolution.
Yes.
Because it's very
glaringly obvious
right now that I don't know, like, I just don't know. And I come at this as someone who likes covering Morgan Frost. I think he's a really good guy, and I think he has skill. I don't think he is a bum. I think he is a perfectly solid middle six center. I just don't see where a perfectly solid middle six center fits long-term in a world where Jet Luchenko at least is going to start out as a middle six center, and Sean Couturier more or less has to be a middle six center because while he's been fine this year, somewhere between probably fine and legitimately good, he's not a 1C anymore.
No.
And Jet Luchenko, unless he shocks the hell out of everyone, including the Flyers, he's not going to jump to the NHL and immediately be a 1C either. So the long-term role for Morgan Frost, at least for the next, 2, 3, 4 years, would be him to be the scoring 1C, but he doesn't score enough or consistently enough to be a scoring 1C. So I just don't know where the long-term fit is, and I think John Tortorella is coming to that conclusion if he didn't come to that conclusion 2 years ago. I think Danny Briere might also be, because Danny loves Morgan Frost. I mean, he wears Danny's number. He's a big Morgan Frost guy. I think if John Tortorella would have had his choice, Frost would have been gone maybe after year 1, definitely after year 2. Danny Briere believes in Morgan Frost, but I think he has to at least be saying that, yeah, in the here and now, he's important because you got to have a skilled center to play with Michkov. But long term, if he's not going to take a leap, I don't know where the fit is. So I get why fans are like, well, if that's the reality of the situation, just resolve it now. Why do we have to sit through another, 4 months of this when we know that it's not going to work? It's like, if you know you're not happy with your partner, like just break up. Like don't drag it out for another 2 years.
Well, some people would say, I want to do the smart thing and make sure I have a replacement first. And that's kind of what's going on right here. God. But I mean, that is kind of what's going on here. And like, just in terms of Frost's role, like, okay, we need someone to do this. Like the coach is saying we need to go find somebody to fill this. So even if like Luchenko and Coots, it's like, well, where does Frost fit? He doesn't. Like there's only 3 spots. And then of course the 4C, which he's definitely not going to be either. Like he has just as much chance being the 4C as he does the 1.
Yeah.
Well, there's nowhere else for him to go. They need at least 1, if not 2 more centers. It's very obvious that Morgan Frost isn't going to be one. I just don't know if that's I don't know if it's a trade you can make in season.
You could make it, but it would take, like, you can't trade Morgan Frost and not have another center coming back, whether it's in that trade or it's in a separate trade, which is what just makes it complicated. It makes it tough to pull off in season. Again, I know fans want trades, and there have been rumors, and people
we're going
to
talk about them.
And I get it. I totally get it. Trades are fun because it means something's happening. But those kinds of complicated maneuvers don't usually happen in season. Like a move that requires another move to make it make sense, those moves tend to happen in the offseason.
Trades are hard, Charlie, so I've been told.
So I've been told by one Chuck
But
Fletcher.
It would be probably a little bit easier than trading to maybe call somebody up from the AHL. And that is more of a possibility than it was a couple of days ago. We talked about this when it happened, but today, Matty Campbell put out an article about the Flyers signing Phantom center Jacob Gaucher. Gaucher. I said it.
No, we both got it right.
Yeah. To an actual NHL entry-level contract. He was on an AHL only deal.
Right.
And suddenly he's one of the 50 contracts.
He is.
You could technically call him up. He's had a decent year. I think he leads them in goal scoring.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a down-the-line possibility at some point?
Look, you wouldn't assign him to an entry-level deal if you didn't think that he had NHL potential, whether that's now or down the road. He's 23 years old, so while he's not old, he certainly still qualifies as a prospect.
Yeah.
He's not super young either.
He's not 18.
He's not a teenager where you say, well, he needs more physical development. Like, one of the reasons why I think they like him is because he's a big guy. He's got size. The way I interpret this signing, because what did they do this past summer in terms of organizational depth? They went overseas and they got Oscar Eklund and they got Rodrigo Alves. two big guys. Eklund's probably more center capable in North America, but both have played center in the past, overseas.
Yeah.
They both had size, and they both are of age where you could slot them right into the NHL if necessary. They talked about both of them as potential call-up options. I think what probably sparked this was them talking internally and being like, okay, well, so if Noah Cates and Ryan Poehling were to get hurt, who would we call up? And probably internally they looked at it like, well, Gaucher's probably the guy we would want to call up. We can't call him up now because he's not on an NHL contract. I think this probably speaks not just to Gaucher, who they've liked. And you read the article by Maddie, she got a lot of great quotes for me and LaPerriere. It seems like Gaucher is someone that LaPerriere really likes and respects, and he's probably advocated for him as well. But I think this may just as much be them saying, like, the reality of the situation is he's above Eklund and Obols on the organizational depth chart. The only reason why he wouldn't be the call-up over those guys in a pinch is that he's not on an NHL contract.
Yeah.
Let's give him the NHL contract, because if we're willing to give those guys NHL contracts and this guy's better.
He's outperformed them.
Yeah.
And I think that probably speaks to you in a merit-based society.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing we like about sports. He's earned it. He gets the contract.
What I love about it. He's outplayed the guys who earn NHL contracts. He's functionally, I believe, at least according to LaPerriere in this article, he's been used as their 1C.
Yes.
If he's their 1C and he's 23 years old and has the physical ability and isn't going to get worn down because he's like 6'3" and big, then sure. If you were willing to give those guys contracts and this guy's better.
And it's one of the reasons in the preseason we were talking about Massimo Rizzo as a legitimate possibility. If he could make this team, because he has attributes they're looking for.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
he's a grown man who can play center.
And in 11 games, he has 0 points.
Yeah, it hasn't gone exactly the way we were hoping.
This was the concern about Rizzo, was that I thought he was going to be one of those guys where he's going to hit the pro level and either it's going to translate or it's not. Well, through 11 games, it hasn't.
So far, it hasn't worked out that way, but they have found somebody else who might be able to fill that role.
Right.
And listen, Carolina gave him to you for nothing.
Yeah.
It's not a shock.
It's
That's
not
the
a
way
shock
it
to
went.
Rizzo.
Yeah.
But Gaucher, like, here's the thing. He's not a guy who you're going to call up and expect to be a star. And Maddie talks about that in her article, about the fact that, look, he's probably a swingman, a guy who can come up, play a few games. She kind of compared him to, not stylistically, because Richard plays a totally different game, but same kind of idea, where he's a guy you call up for a couple weeks and he could hold his own and maybe make some plays, and then you're probably going to send him back down. But you need those guys too. You need to have that quality organizational depth, because injuries happen. It's the NHL.
All right. Before we wrap up today's show, let me tell you about Ace Hardware Home Services. If you've got a leaky pipe, Ace Hardware Home Services is around the block with everything you need to fix it, including the person to do the fixing. Same goes for air conditioning issues like I had a few months ago. And that leaky faucet you said you'd fix last fall, it's been a year. Get over yourself. Hire someone to do it. And the best person to do it, they're at Ace Hardware Home Services, because now they're not just the helpful hardware folks, they're the helpful home services and repair folks. From plumbing to heating and cooling, they've got the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, they're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love from the store, now to your front door. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project. While we're here, I love TrueMark Financial Credit Union, and right now they have a great opportunity to help teach your kids to make responsible money decisions, something I probably could have used as a child, because we all know how hard it is to win without proper coaching. And if you've got kids, TrueMark has the ultimate playbook for teaching financial responsibility with a free Greenlight account. The Greenlight app is changing the game, helping kids and teens learn how to earn, save, and spend wisely. They can set up saving goals, track their spending, and even get an allowance all right there in the Greenlight app. And here's the really cool part. Each kid gets their own debit card so they can make purchases and learn real-world money skills while you stay in control from your phone. So you get peace of mind, and they get the freedom to make smart decisions with their money. It's like coaching your kids through their very own financial game. And for TrueMark Financial members, it's free. So with the holidays right around the corner, now is the perfect time to introduce your kids to Greenlight. Get signed up today. Visit trumark.com/Greenlight for more information. All right, Charlie. As much as I've said all year, like, I don't know if we see Torts mess with the lines, and he'll still do it in games. Some bump a guy up, bump a guy down. But for the last few weeks, they've really kind of had a set lineup, at least at forward.
Yeah.
And kind of working out, at least in terms of like the process. It's going really well. Like, all 4 of their lines right now are killing it in the expected goal rankings. Just compare across the league. It's everyone in the matchups they're getting is doing very, very well.
Yeah.
Now, the finishing, obviously, that's why you need high-end talent, because scoring is real hard, and that's what they're missing. Hard to complain about anything else, though.
Yeah, well, and it kind of makes sense when you look at the lines they've settled on. And both the finishing problem and the play driving strength, both of them make sense. Like, let's go from bottom to top, okay? So start with line 4. We've always thought that a line of Scott Laughton, Ryan Poehling, and Garnet Hathaway should be a great 4th line, period.
Makes sense.
Like, that is a 4th line. That isn't when you're talking about, like, well, it's a good 4th line for the Flyers. Like, no, that is an elite 4th line on paper. You have a guy in Laughton who probably is like a true talent 3rd liner playing the 4th line. You've got Poehling, who is one of the faster straight line skaters in the NHL and is a former 1st-round pick. And then you've got Hathaway, who, low-key, one of the best forechecking, play-driving, bottom 6 wingers in the league. That's a great 4th line. Makes sense they're driving play. Then you look at the 3rd line. Okay, Noah Cates historically has driven play really, really well, 5-on-5, via his defensive acumen. Tyson Foerster, through a season and change, a season and a third, also been a good play-driving winger, largely due to his defensive acumen. Bobby Brink, okay, he's a little bit more of a defensive liability. He's gotten better this year as a checker. John Tortorella's praised him for it. He brings some offensive punch, and he can be the scorer type on that line. That line makes sense. Also makes sense that they're not scoring a ton because Noah Cates isn't much of a scorer. Bobby Brink is still developing in that area. Same with Tyson Foerster. It makes sense they would drive play.
I really appreciated John Tortorella complimenting Bobby Brink. Last year he couldn't spell check. which is hilarious.
It is funny. It's a very funny.
It's like, do you think he even knew he was going with like spell check? Like, do you think he even understood that that's funny for multiple reasons?
It is good.
But no, it's funny when he compliments a guy by dissing what they did 6, 8, 12 months ago.
I hate it the way he used to play. He was a good skating boy. Oh, Torts.
He's great.
But so there's your bottom 6. Both those lines make sense that they would drive play. Your second line, you've got Tippett and Michkov, 2 of your most talented. Well, Michkov is your most talented. Tippett is top 3 or 4 in terms of most talented. And then you got Frost, who last year was a play-driving center. He scored at about a 45-ish point rate, and his underlying numbers were great. Owen Tippett, for all the grief he gets from people that say he's a stupid player, and I get it, some of his decisions aren't the best. Historically, he has driven play at a pretty high rate, and Michkov is Michkov. Makes sense that line would work. And then your first line, you've got the most developed best player on the team in Konechny. You've got the one center they have who is like a legitimate top 6 center still in Couturier. And then you've got Farabee, who, you know what? He's creating tons of chances.
He's doing stuff.
He just can't finish.
No, there's a reason the expected goals are good, because I am expecting him to score a lot more as well.
I believe it was Jay Fresh who put out his, every other week he puts out like league-wide rankings. And Joel Farabee individually is the lowest. He's the forward in the league that has the biggest negative discrepancy between his individual expected goals and how many actual goals he scored. No player in the league, there is a bigger negative discrepancy. He's like 6 goals behind where he should be.
Which works perfectly for Jay Fresh. Like the rivalry between these two that started with the watch a game comment.
Yep.
And it's like, you can point to this guy, but like, really, why would Joel Farabee care about that?
Exactly.
Oh, my, guess what? The check's still clear.
Well, and the thing is, Farabee, That was
he knows he's not scoring.
That was a funny thing with him giving it back to Jay Fresh. But also, he doesn't need numbers to know that he should have more goals.
Yeah,
he's played in the games. He knows he should have scored more.
He had like 25 shots in those games.
Yeah.
None of them went in.
Yeah.
He knows he needs to score more. He just has.
Yeah, he doesn't need to see numbers to know that he's been snake bitten. I'm sure he's living it more than any of us.
So what took them this long to get to this like group of lines? To me, there's one very obvious answer, and it's like, well, once we settled, can Michkov play on that top line with Couturier and TK? And the answer to us, at least, was no. Like, should he? Could he? Yeah. It's not like they weren't making plays. Like, it was working pretty well. It's like, is this best for him? No. Okay. How do we make it work then? And the bumping up of Farabee, I guess, was the most surprising thing because it wasn't going great for him. And then suddenly he started making some plays. It was like, oh, bump him up.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's playing poorly.
Yeah.
It's just he needs to score.
Well, Tortorella is just doubling down on the idea of like eventually he's going to start scoring. And when he does, it's going to be great. It's going to solve all of our problems.
But it just hasn't gone that way yet. But I guess it's when I see that and still look at the scoring problem, to me, it's, well, the whole team will eventually start scoring. Is that how I should look at it? Like, they could not, I guess. But a team on the playoff bubble getting this sort of underlying number, you got to believe, like, the results will eventually catch up.
I'm not convinced. Just because of the way that they've structured these lines. Like, that fourth line, great fourth line. I'm not expecting it to score much.
No.
But it's a great fourth line. It does exactly what you want a fourth line to do. Third line, yeah, given the fact that they drive play, you would think, but how much do I really trust Noah Cates and Tyson Forster at this stage of his career to score a ton? I don't. It could happen. You never know. But they both, at this stages of their respective careers, might be at the point where they're never going to score as much as the territorial play would imply they should. Line 2, yeah, that line should score. And it's Michkov, so he's going to get his goals. He's going to get his points. He's a real good player. Line 1, like, yeah, we can say up and down that Joel Farabee has to start scoring eventually, but does he? I'd like to think so.
I mean, like, some. He has to score some. Maybe he doesn't score 35 goals or like at that pace, but
I would like to
20-goal pace for the rest of the way. Yes. I feel like that's doable here for a guy who scored 20 goals before.
He's the one guy where you look at and you say, like, I'm not going to look at a Ryan Poehling or a Noah Cates or even a Tyson Forster right now and say they're due to score more goals. This is just maybe who they are at the stages of their careers. Joel Farabee is the one guy I look at, and we've talked about on the show. I'm like, historically, he has been a good finisher. He has been good at the thing that he has been real bad at this year. The rules of statistical analysis will tell you that, like, regression should be coming for him. And when I say regression, I mean positive regression, in that the guy who has held a career shooting percentage over 12% for his entire career is not going to keep scoring at a 3-4% rate. Was I right on those numbers?
Yeah. He's 12% exactly for his career with this season. His lowest number, let's see, shooting percentage, 12.6 before this year.
What is he at this season?
This year he is at, 6 even.
Okay. That's actually higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah. The lowest prior to this year was his rookie season, 9.9. So he's never been below 10%. Right now he's at 6.
Yeah.
One must believe for at least a period of this season, he will get back to around at least 10%. All right, Charlie, I want to talk about these Kings rumors before we get to super chats real quick. So we hear Saravalli the other day and gets people up in arms because, yeah, man, trade rumors, let's go. I mean, listen, there's a reason we get to this with 7 minutes left, but I described and named the show based on trade rumors.
Yeah, people love trade rumors.
This is good for everyone.
It is.
Fans love it. It drives content. It drives numbers.
Yeah.
It's the way it is. But listen, there's something there. Saravalli is an insider, and if there's one organization he has the finger on the pulse of, you got to believe it's this one. He was here a long time.
Yeah, he covered this team for multiple seasons.
So it's his quote. I don't think it's dead, but I do think the Kings talk to the Flyers about some of the forwards that they have. I don't think it's imminent, and I'm not saying Konechny. I don't think they're trading Konechny. No, I think there's a whole group of guys that teams have been calling about Frost, Farabee, Scott Lawton, Bobby Brink. The one guy that they're not willing to entertain a conversation on is Tyson Foerster,
Makes
and
sense.
that goes with a lot of what they've said to you on and off the record about Tyson Foerster. Yeah. We think he was a steal where we drafted him, and he has top-line potential down the line.
And there's also the fact that there were those scattered rumors about him in the lead up to the Jiricek trade. This strikes me as the Flyers wanting to get the word out that, don't think we're trading him.
That's one of the guys who was mentioned for Columbus, and they're like, nah, so that makes sense. But when you hear, first of all, with the rumors, like I think Jonesy said recently, like, yeah, we're going to do stuff at one point or another, but when we do, if and when we do, it'll probably be stuff that you didn't hear about because we're pretty good at keeping secrets. Yeah. Like that is a thing, so that's possible. But when you hear the Kings, one, we know the team has a relationship. Like Dean Lombardi still works here, Yeah. There is a long-standing relationship between these organizations. They've made a bunch of trades. When you hear the Kings, there's two names that make sense to me. It's the two young centers,
right?
Quinton Byfield and Alex Turcotte. Quinton Byfield is the one we would want.
Yep.
Does it make sense for them to trade him?
I said this last year, and I will continue to hold to it. I know Byfield isn't having a very good year this year, which is probably why people are starting to dream on, maybe they'll give up on him. Look, the Flyers should absolutely be calling on Quinton Byfield.
Yeah, sure.
He is as close of an ideal fit for what they need as exists in the NHL today. He is a big, really quick, great skating center for his size with a ton of skill. Last year, his underlying numbers were fantastic. This year, he's taken a step back. He's not scoring as much. He's playing on their third line. His underlying numbers aren't awful, but they're more middle of the road. You think, okay, maybe we can try to buy low a little on this guy. Maybe they're getting frustrated with him. The Flyers should be asking about him. The Kings would be insane to trade him. That's where I'm at. If the Flyers offer off Michkov, sure, but they would never do that. So to me, it's like, yes, they should be asking about Byfield. And hey, maybe organizations do stupid things once in a while. But I don't understand why they would trade him. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't think if you're keeping Michkov off the table, which of course the Flyers are, what kind of package could you put together that would even make them interested? I guess it would be headlined by Luchenko, probably.
I get that would maybe make sense, maybe Oliver Bonk, but they're talking about some of the forwards the Flyers have, at least in the Saravat. What sense does it make to add one of these guys and subtract? And I assume there'd have to be maybe all four of those teams. If you're going to get a former second overall pick from just a few years ago, I don't think it makes sense for LA, but hey, we've been on the other side of a bunch of those trades. We have this organization. How many times have we talked about you don't want to be that team anymore? Maybe LA, for whatever reason, they're looking at listen, we only have Kopitar so much longer. Doughty, we expect him back. We only have him so much longer. We don't have time to wait for Byfield to be what we thought he was going to be when we drafted him second overall.
I just don't see it.
I just don't really see they're trying to win.
Yeah.
So
they're a good team this year.
Yeah, they're a good team. Yeah. So futures don't make sense for them. All the draft picks we have.
You would have to do some sort of mix of to me, it would have to be something like Luchenko plus two roster players that are, because then you could say, okay, well, not only are we maybe better this year, we also have a big future piece that we got for this former second overall pick. It's the only way it would make any sense to me. But does it, if you offer Joel Farabee and Bobby Brink and Luchenko, that doesn't strike me as anywhere near enough.
No, it doesn't. Unless the rest of the league looked at Jet Luchenko and saw whatever the Flyers saw to be oh yes, he deserves to make this team. I can't see that being a great fit. And then if you do add Byfield and subtract Luchenko, while maybe Byfield has considerably more upside, you still have a center problem. You still very much have
you still need one more.
We still need another center.
You still need one more. So you could get another one.
Sure.
If you get Byfield and then you're okay, he's our 1C of the future, then you can get a 2C
especially
in this draft.
Drafting where you think they're going to be drafting this year and with all the picks they have, it would make sense. Before we wrap up today's show, I just want to thank our audience watching on TV. Very much appreciate all of you who do that. Head over to allphly.com for more of the show. And I don't believe we have any super chats. So the only thing left, listen, the Kings thing is out there. We've heard they were in on Jiricek.
Turcotte strikes me as more realistic.
Okay.
That said, he doesn't have nearly the ceiling that Byfield does.
And that could be where it's like, yeah, man, Frost and whatever, and maybe it's just 2 change of scenery guys.
And in fairness, the way that Saravalli presents this rumor is not the Flyers are looking to trade for the Kings players.
The Kings want some...
It's the Kings are looking at Flyers players to try to beef up their forward core. Now, obviously, the Flyers can take those talks and spin it in a direction they want to go.
Sure.
There's nothing stopping them from being like, oh, yeah, we'll give you Farabee, but you got to give us a piece we want too. And not just a draft pick, but like an actual piece. That's fair. But the way this is positioned is more maybe them being like, well, we'll give you a draft pick for Bobby Brink, or what would it cost to get Scott Lawton? Things like that.
That makes a lot more sense for them. Like, yeah, you're looking to add, not subtract. You have a really good team. So we'll see how that plays out. One more thing on trades. Is there a trade, or at least a trade partner, that you look around, just been thinking about, something that just kind of makes sense to you? Is there a team out there that you think, like, this makes sense to me? Even if it's not adding a guy for now, just a team that maybe one of the Flyers guys fits on, that they could be looking to take a Frost or a Farabee or whoever.
It's an interesting question. I mean, the one team that just jumps out at me the most, it goes back to something I said last season, where I think it was really last summer in the lead up to the active part of the summer. My point was, there are teams that look like they're about to do something stupid, and you want to be the team that they do that stupid thing with, because then you take advantage of them panicking. Buffalo just strikes me as a team in panic mode. Like the Rangers are in panic mode too, but they're never going to make a deal with the Flyers, so you can kind of take them off the list. The Sabres, though, the names that they're throwing out there, like Dylan Cousins is very intriguing to me.
Yeah.
I don't know how available he really is, but he's been coming up enough that you think maybe you bowl them over with something.
That's the team I've been targeting. And listen, there's that 3 teams in the Atlantic that are just supposed to be taking a step, and they just don't.
It seems like Ottawa is playing pretty well.
Ottawa is like figuring it out.
Buffalo's the team where they're just spinning their wheels.
Ottawa is figuring it out. Allmark's been a lot better, and that was a big problem for them last year. The goaltending, they're kind of coming around a bit. Then you look at Detroit, and it's like, well, what the hell's going on there? And Buffalo is a freaking mess. Yeah. And based on their ownership not being very good, like, maybe that's the team. Like Kevin Adams, maybe he's going to do something dumb to keep his job. Yeah. Who knows? I could see that happening. The thing that just keeps making sense to me, it's Risto to Vancouver.
Ooh, okay.
I just look at Vancouver.
Okay.
And
I can see it.
They traded for Zadorov last season. They did it early.
Yeah,
they
did.
It feels like ever since he left, they've been looking to fill that, whatever that thing is that he brought them.
Fair.
And who's available? That's just like him.
It's Risto.
He's a big old dude who throws a bunch of hits.
Yep.
And listen, the puck moving, he's never going to be a superstar, but it's been better this year. He's got a little bit of point production, maybe a little more confidence. You get him to a team with that sort of skill, and perhaps you can see a little bit more of that puck moving ability that people thought Risto might have early in his career. So I just think that's the place that really makes sense for him. We'll see how it works out.
The 3 teams that I've heard come up the most, and it's not even in terms of rumors, just in terms of people theorizing, it's for Ristolainen, I mean. Vancouver, Edmonton, Dallas. And Dallas.
Dallas.
Those are the 3.
I heard, like, when I first heard what Edmonton was looking for, it was like they need a right-handed defenseman. And then I think their coach was just like, I don't care what hand he is. We need a puck mover. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, that might not be him. But you're always looking for size headed into the playoffs.
Exactly.
And Dallas, that's kind of a thing they're looking for.
They traded for Tanev last year.
They're a team that went after one of the Tanevs.
Yeah.
And worked out for them, at least in the short term. Now they maybe need that again. It's always something teams are looking for. We'll see. All right, and that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. PHLY Flyers presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'll be back here tomorrow, watch along, and post. So make sure you're following us right here on the YouTube page so you don't miss that. Hit that reminder bell so you never miss a live show. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. And follow the podcast as well. Wherever you get those, just search PHLY Flyers. That's it. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until tomorrow, let's go Flyers.
We all silly like the mayor.